Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have very big news to cover out of Ukraine, Russia, Venezuela, Germany, and China, and let's jump right into it. This morning, Germany's officially reinstated a military draft requiring 18-year-olds to report for an examination to determine their eligibility for service. Meanwhile, Ukraine's launched a massive attack on the Russian city of Oryol, striking a thermal power plant with new weapons, and also we have remarkable footage showing some unknown weapon exploding in the skies of Russia. Meanwhile, we have news out of Venezuela that the US president has been briefed on land strikes, and a final decision is imminent as US naval vessels close in on Venezuela's coast. And we also have major news that China has threatened Japan with a major war if they dare interfere with the Taiwan situation from this point forward. So we have very big news from around the world today, so let's jump right into our first article, which goes to Visegrad 24. And right now, this is our bombshell story of the day. We are hearing that Germany is set to reinstate military conscription in their country for the first time in a very long time, and we are hearing that today Germany's ruling coalition will present a draft law introducing a new concept where conscription, when needed, will be based on a lottery system, and under the proposal, all 18-year-olds will undergo a medical assessment with the option extended to women on a voluntary basis, and the reform will first affect men born in 2008 and who will be required to complete a mandatory medical check, and every male will receive a questionnaire titled Interest in Service, and there will be an option for yes or no, and responding will be obligatory, and if there are not enough volunteers, the Bundestag, which is the legislature in Germany, will have the authority to trigger a compulsory draft through a lottery. So this is a pretty big deal right here. This is actually somewhat similar to what the US has in place right now for their draft system, and it's somewhat similar to it, a little bit different, but generally along the same lines. But this is a big deal because Germany is reinstating the situation because presumably they expect to go to war in the next couple of years. So that's a very big deal right now, and it sounds like Germany is going to go through with this, and also 18-year-olds will have to undergo a medical assessment to see if they're actually eligible for service. So that is quite wild to see as of today. But the really wild part is Germany is not the only country thinking about doing this and actually carrying it out. We're also hearing from Poland today that Poland is considering bringing back universal conscription, and the general staff says there may soon be no alternative to the contrary. And Brigadier General Rafał Mrnik, the head of military training at the Polish General Staff, has openly spoken in favor of restoring universal military service, and according to him, it not only meets the needs of the armed forces and national defense, but also strengthens the reserve and prepares society for crisis situations. And he also stressed that demographics and future threats will imminently push Poland toward this decision, and sooner or later we will have to face this choice, said the Polish general. So it looks like not only is Germany considering this and also going through with it, but also Poland is strongly considering that. So based on what we're seeing in Germany, I would not be shocked to see Poland introduce universal conscription again very, very soon, and this is a bad sign that once again war is definitely on the horizon, or otherwise they would not be introducing these measures. So very interesting and also kind of disturbing to see right there in these posts. But moving on to our next post here, this one goes to Null Reports. Because meanwhile, inside of Russia, things are not going good there either. Right now, Ukraine carried out a massive attack against the Russian city of Oryol, and it looks like it was an intense night of drone activity with air defense systems visibly active across the city of Oryol inside of Russia, and footage shows debris from intercepted UAVs falling onto residential buildings and courtyards, and also the Russian authorities are claiming over 130 drones were shot down, and explosions were also reported near Afipsky in Krasnodar Krai, likely targeting a local oil refinery, and right now the damage is being assessed. So Oryol was under a huge attack. This happened a few hours ago last night in the Russian time, and this right now is a huge attack. We're also getting some wild footage coming out of this attack, appearing to show debris from some odd weapon that I've really never seen before. I've never seen debris quite like this, and we're going to take a look at that video in our next post. But first of all, let's see some of the strikes inside of Oryol based on what we saw from the footage. So let's take a look. Alright, so this is the Russian city of Oryol. As you can see, major smoke in the distance from these drone strikes. And right here you see the Russians are talking about this incident right now in the background. Oh, and right there goes a Russian interceptor going toward a drone. And it just struck it apparently. So that was one confirmed hit by the Russian air defense systems. Really shockingly to see that on camera. And you can see this is a very, very large attack. And presumably out there in the distance, I believe that most likely is the Oryol thermal power plant, because that was the main target of this strike by Ukraine. They were trying to take out the thermal power plant inside of Oryol. So I believe that's where the smoke is coming from, is we did see a confirmed hit on that plant, which we'll get to in just a minute, but obviously a very big hit and a rare sighting of Russian air defense actually working around that plant, which means it must be very important to Russia, or otherwise they would not expend the air defense system to be protecting that plant. So very interesting to see in that clip. But moving on to our next one here, this one goes to Ocean Defender. And moving on to this post right here, we have a very, very weird piece of footage right here. We've seen a remarkable video appearing to show debris from some weapon falling on the city of Oryol, and all we know so far is Ukraine carried out this large-scale attack using cruise missiles and drones. We're not exactly sure which type of weapons were used, but once again, the target was the Oryol thermal power plant, but I'm not sure what would cause debris quite like this. This is very, very strange looking debris. We've seen a lot of videos of missiles breaking up over the skies. This one looks unusual. There's so many fragments of missile debris that's obviously visible in the skies here. So let me just go ahead and show y'all this and let you sort of make up your own mind on it, but it is interesting to see, to say the least. So let's take a look at the footage. So right here you can see there is the debris falling out of the skies of Oryol, and that is a very interesting looking debris right there. The Russians are claiming they shot down a cruise missile from Ukraine. We're not sure which cruise missile, but that is a lot of fragments of a very lit debris that we're seeing falling to the ground. And as you can see down there on the bottom, it's falling on the ground and actually torching some cars down there actually on the ground. So for once, the Russians weren't lying when they said there was a debris situation in Oryol. There actually was this time, and we can see that right here on camera. But right now it's up to speculation which type of weapons Ukraine used on this Russian city, because right now we simply don't have that information. But with that, we're now moving on to our next post here, which also goes to Ocean Defender. And like I mentioned before, the Oryol thermal power plant was the main primary target in this attack, and as we can see right here in the image, it was clearly definitely hit. There's also some prior damage that you can see here in the photo, but there's also added damage as well that's also sort of mixed in with the old damage. So Ukraine is hitting this thing consistently around the same spot here, and we're seeing that here again, because apparently this cruise missile and drone attack struck the exact same spot, at least according to reporting we're hearing right now. So Oryol is definitely getting struck heavily, and we did see that there. But moving into our next post, this one goes to Tendar, and also we saw a big strike on an oil refinery in the Republic of Tatarstan, and currently it's been severely struck, and it looks like it's one of the primary oil processing units that's currently on fire. So Tatarstan also catching some strays in the midst of the attack on Oryol. So let's see what's happening here in Tatarstan. All right, and there you have it right there. This is the oil refinery, and obviously it is burning. Let me go ahead and mute the audio, but you can see there, it is definitely burning. It's on fire right there, and we're believing it was a drone attack, but not entirely sure about that. But obviously, I think the Tatarstan government's saying that it was some type of pressurization issue or something, but a lot of other people are saying it was a strike. So to me, it appears to be a strike. I mean, it seems to be happening about the same time we saw the attack on Oryol, so I believe it was struck. Also, kudos to the guy cleaning the street out here while the refinery's burning. He's out here making sure the street is perfectly clean. You got to admire that. But very interesting to see. But moving on to our next one here, this one goes to Max 25. And also we've seen another big loss for Russia. Russia's taking an aircraft loss today as well. We're seeing on the Russian back channels, they're saying an Su-27 crashed near Petrozadovsk. And according to SHOT, which is a Russian source, at least allegedly, the tragedy occurred near the city airport and the plane crashed in a forest, and emergency services went on their way to the scene. So if I have it correct, I believe the old saying is earth is sky, brothers, ground is sky, or something like that. I think that's what the Russian back channels always say when they lose an aircraft. So I guess fighter bomber needs to say the line. Say the line, fighter bomber, because it looks like they've lost another Russian aircraft. But moving on to our next post, this one also goes to Nexta, and we're getting some interesting statements right now, or some analysis out of the US coming from the State Department. So let's take a look. And we can see here that it looks like the Secretary of State Marco Rubio believes that Washington has nearly exhausted its options for new sanctions against Russia, and the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio openly stated that Washington has almost no tools left for introducing new sanctions against Russia, and the largest oil companies are already under restrictions, and beyond that, it's pretty much a dead end. And according to Rubio, at least allegedly, it will now be up to Europe to deal with Russia's shadow fleet, and the U.S., he claims, has already done its part. So it sounds to me, and once again, we're very glad that the U.S. put these sanctions on the Russian oil companies. That was obviously something that was needed for a very long time, and it finally happened about a week or two ago, but it looks like the US is also taking another step back, and it's leaving it up to Europe to deal with the shadow fleet. And I was bringing this point up on air last night, that the shadow fleet that Russia has, which is obviously bypassing sanctions and selling the oil nonetheless to get around those sanctions, it's a big issue, and it looks like the US is going to pretty much leave that up to Europe to deal with it. So kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing, I guess. It depends on how Europe handles it, but that's what we're hearing right now out of the US. But moving into our next one here, this one also goes to Military News Ukraine. We're also getting some interesting analysis out of Ukraine itself. We're hearing from a high-ranking Ukrainian official, according to recent reporting, that the winter is Russia's last chance to win the war, at least according to Ukraine, and if Ukraine holds out until April the 1st, we will win the war. So it sounds to me like Ukraine believes if they can hold out until April of next year, then Russia will simply be at a dead end, because right now Ukraine is expected to face difficult months due to power outages coming up throughout the rest of this year and into 2026. And right now the Russians are making a very large push on many different areas in the front line, including Pokrovsk, simply to grab some land before it seems like it's too late. So Ukraine believes they can actually do this thing and actually win this war on the front lines if they can make it to April 1st. So very ambitious goals there. We'll have to see if that actually turns out to be true, but that's coming out of Ukraine. But moving into our next one, this one goes to War Translated. Also a quick note, by the way, we saw the other day that the Oryol oil refinery inside of Russia apparently was struck, and now it has halted operations, at least according to reports, and it looks like it is out of action. So it was a very big hit. It looks like it's a very big result as well, now that it's definitely halted operations. So a very big hit for Russia at a very big time. They don't need that. So moving into our next post, this one goes to Military News Ukraine. And we have one more thing out of Russia, by the way. You got to look at this thing. It's absolutely awful. And right here we can see another Russian tank in hedgehog style, and I don't even know what that is they welded to it, but it's just, you know, they think this works, and I'm not really sure if it does work, but it looks bad. Like, this looks really, really ugly, and also, like, I'm not even sure how you really get onto the tank with all this stuff on it, but that's what they're doing now for drone defense, is this hedgehog style stuff with these like barbed wires or whatever this is attached to the tank. So pretty much another Russian Mobile in a different form. But moving on to our next post here, this one goes to Fitux News, and let's move on from our Russia-Ukraine news for a second and move into our news about Venezuela, because we have some big happenings today out of that region of the world. And we can see here that senior U.S. military officials, including the Secretary of War and Chairman Kane, briefed the U.S. President on updated options for potential land strikes in Venezuela yesterday, and right now the President has not made his decision, but at least according to reports, it sounds like the decision is imminent, and pretty much all the chess pieces are in place now to carry out land strikes onto Venezuela, or maybe even something more than that. Right now, we're not really sure what exactly it's going to look like, but we do know that Venezuela is going to be attacked imminently by the United States in some form or another. So I'm not sure really why the U.S. is holding off on it. They've moved tons of assets into the region, spent a ton of money to get them down there. So I really doubt the U.S. is simply going to walk away and sell the ships out of the area without attacking Venezuela in some form or another. So right now, we're waiting on that decision out of the Oval Office. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Conflict Radar, and we've also got some big news about another U.S. naval vessel closing in on Maduro's government. Because we can see right here, the U.S. Navy destroyer USS Stockdale is only 50 kilometers off the coast of Venezuela. Let's take a look at this. You can see right here, there is Caracas right there in the middle of the screen, and the little mark right there in the middle that says U.S. government vessel, that is allegedly the USS Stockdale going into position right off the coast of Venezuela, 50 kilometers away. So it's literally, you can probably spot this thing from the coast, I would imagine, or at least you can spot it maybe with a telescope or something right there off the coast, and that is wild to see that right there. I'm sure Maduro is scared to death about what this thing is doing so close right there, but the U.S. is once again closing in on the capital city and making these shows of force, once again, this time with a naval destroyer right off the coast. So a very big move indeed, but also we have even more movements by the U.S. Navy today, because we can see right here a Grumman C-2A Greyhound, which is a fixed-wing logistics aircraft built to service aircraft carriers specifically, is now showing up on Flight Radar 24 some 80 nautical miles east of the British Virgin Islands, and it indicates the presence of a carrier. And also we do know the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group just showed up in the area of Southcom, in the area of responsibility, which is responsible for Venezuela. So let's take a look right here. You can see there is that aircraft right there. It's lurking around out here, and we had already heard reports that it is in the area, and it sounds like it is definitely there now that we're seeing this aircraft, the Greyhound, lurking around the site. So this thing's really about to pop off. If the U.S. is actually planning on attacking, it will happen very, very soon, because now the chess pieces are in place for it actually to go down. So we did see that, but also moving into our next post here, this one also goes to FITUX Network, and we're hearing the Colombian president is once again running his mouth. He's once again back at it again, and the Colombian president has said and proposed to revive Gran Colombia, which is apparently a 19th century union of Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Panama with a common parliament and a shared presidency like the EU to counter U.S. military strikes in the Caribbean, which have eliminated over 70 suspected drug traffickers. So I guess you could call this the Rat Pack union right here. This sounds like a very pitiful union, and once again, the Colombian president is really mouthing off heavily right now, and he wants to revive this union of Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Panama, which is probably one of the weakest unions I've ever heard of. If they actually pull that off, I'm not really sure what that union would be able to do because, you know, their militaries aren't exactly that strong, but it sounds like they're trying to unify in some form or another because of the recent U.S. aggressions against Venezuela. So I doubt that's going anywhere, and also even if it did, I wouldn't be too concerned about it in my personal opinion. But nonetheless, moving into our next post here, this one goes to Mensch Osen. And let's move into a different region of the world this time. Let's take a look at the Indian Ocean, because right now Diego Garcia, the air base that the U.S. operates from, apparently is showing a deployment of 4 U.S. Air Force KC-135 tankers, which apparently left a few hours ago, and they also showed up at the Diego Garcia air base, which seems a little bit odd. Usually when we see something like this, it indicates that maybe something's going to happen with Iran or something of that nature, maybe new strikes on Iran perhaps. Right now we simply don't know. It's too early to tell, but as you can see right here in this very blurry image, there appear to be 4 refueling tankers sitting on the tarmac. But taking a look at our other image from Flight Radar 24, we can see that apparently these tankers came from Okinawa Air Base and they deployed to Diego Garcia, but we're not really sure why. It could be routine rotations or training exercises like some are suggesting. We simply don't know yet, but right now there is a deployment there, and it makes you wonder, is something about to happen with Iran once again? But only time's going to tell with that. But moving into our next post here, we got another bombshell report, this time about China and Taiwan, and also Japan is getting dragged into this thing as well, and we see it right here in the post from Disclosed TV. Because today China's issued a crazy threat toward Japan, and we've heard the Chinese Foreign Ministry say that if Japan intervenes militarily in the Taiwan Strait situation, then China will strike back decisively and warns Japan not to play with fire on the Taiwan question, for those who play with fire will perish by it. So a wild statement today coming out of China. They are directly threatening Japan with a major war if Japan messes with the Taiwan situation pretty much whatsoever. And right now the Chinese government still does have its eyes on Taiwan, but for right now though, we are seeing China get really wild with their threats and accusations toward other countries in the region that are Western aligned. So very interesting to see that. But also we do have some more news here, this time out of one more region of the world that we have right here on our news cycle. We are seeing some news out of India and Pakistan, because remember, there have been some major attacks in both Pakistan and India, and right now both governments are basically beating the drums of war to go back to fighting with one another. And we are hearing today from the Indian Home Minister, he says the punishment for those behind the Delhi car blast attacks will send a message to the world, and no one should ever dare to attack our nation again. So some pretty bold statements from India, but once again, we saw how India did last time with Pakistan. India did not do very well. They lost a lot of aircraft and also got very badly embarrassed, even though they're trying to pretend like they didn't. So India is really yapping a lot, but I'm not really sure if they have much to back that up with, but they seem to be acting quite wild, at least with their statements. But moving on to our next one here, this one also goes to Conflict Radar, and we've heard a clapback from Pakistan. The Pakistan Defense Minister is back at it once again with also the bold statements. And Pakistan is saying today that Islamabad, which is the capital city of Pakistan, is fully prepared for a two-front war against India in the east and the Taliban on the west. And that was a question we discussed on stream about 2 nights ago. We said, is Pakistan going to end up going to war with both Afghanistan and India at the same time? And it looks like Pakistan is now basically responding almost directly to that question we had. And they are saying they will fight on 2 fronts with both India and the Taliban all at the same time, which I wonder if they can handle that. That might be a lot for Pakistan to handle. But between the 2 countries, I think Pakistan is well equipped to handle themselves, at least in my opinion, more so than India. So we'll have to wait and see if Pakistan can actually hold up to that, but I think we're going to find out very soon. But with that, folks, that is actually our last piece of news of the video. So before you go, make sure you smack that like button, because that does tremendously help the channel, and we do appreciate y'all smacking that like button. And also, by the way, if you want to subscribe to the channel, it'll keep you up to date in real time about the events all around the world, and subscribing is obviously free. So smack that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the news around the world. And we try to post these daily short war videos on the daily if possible when there is enough news to cover, and you can trust us to bring you the news when it does happen. And also, by the way, if you want to support the channel financially, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for Patreon, where you can go over there and sign up for a monthly membership, and it could be as little as $5 or $10 a month. Any amount helps the channel tremendously, and we do appreciate our Patreon supporters very, very much. But with that, we will see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on our next nightly War News stream to cover the rest of the events throughout the day, and with that, bye-bye for now.